Hey everyone, welcome back to the least watched series on my channel. Yeah, these videos don't apparently do very well, but you know what? I don't mind, because I enjoy making them. Today, we're going to take a look at Bunny Call. The last book in the Fazbear Fright series this year. Number one, because I enjoy talking about these books, and this is a really good one. You'll definitely want to stick around for the third story, because it's very interesting. And number two, they're just really easy to make, and I have some really cool things in the pipeline, and so I'm just trying to, I'm trying to make some easier videos while I'm working on those bigger projects, which I can't really say what they are right now, but you'll see. In the meantime, we're going to talk about Bunny Call. We're going to go through all three stories. I'll give a short summary for each story. I have done an audiobook for this book, which, at the moment, it's on my channel. YouTube has been, they don't like you uploading audiobooks, and so it might be re-uploaded on my second channel, which is just called Elementia Studios 2. If it is, well, now you know, but for now, at least at the time of recording this, it's on my main channel, so, we'll see how that goes. So, as in typical Fazbear Frights fashion, the first story is just called Bunny Call, and it's very traditional Fazbear Frights, right? You have a man who, his name is Bob, and he doesn't exactly, I'm not sure how to phrase it, right? Because he doesn't hate his family. He doesn't even seem to really dislike them. He's just tired, This guy, he has 3 kids, and they're going off to camp, and he's dreading it. He doesn't want to go. He's not going to enjoy himself, basically. He already sees that coming. He doesn't like the structuredness of it. Is that a word? Structuredness? He doesn't want to go. And so they go to camp. The camp is called Camp Atenia. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I'm just going to go with it, Atenia. And as he's signing them up for the activities that they're going to do, which they're doing a ton, which, and that's already like 20 pages in. The story takes a long time to get to the action. The rest of it is basically not important. But once it gets going, it really gets going. So, as he's signing up for the activities, right, the woman he's signing up with, she asks him, "Do you want to sign up for a bunny call?" She whispers. Real quiet, like. Which is a bit weird, right? Like, I'm not sure why she would want to whisper. It's not like it's anything sinister. The bunny call itself is really just a man in a rabbit costume going to the cabins and waking people up and giving them a little scare, So it's supposed to be a surprise, but not really anything to be super secretive about, I don't think. I don't know. The other thing is, so the whole bunny call thing, right, is, again, a man in a rabbit costume, or it could be an animatronic. It's never actually said. He goes to your cabin in the middle of the night. Actually, I think it's like 5 a.m. And then he wakes you up with his cymbals. You can see he's got some cymbals here. Bang, bang, bang. He comes into your cabin. He's crashing his cymbals. And it's a prank, on all the families at Camp Britannia. But only if you sign up, which, obviously is probably a good thing. And so Bob, he's dreading this whole thing. And so it sounds really mean of him to do this, and it is. It's very mean of him to sign up for this thing because, he has a very sensitive daughter and stuff, and his whole family isn't going to be happy about it. But the story does do a good job of not making you hate him in the past, and also in this book later on. There's some main characters who you just don't really like. In the first book, for instance, what was her name? Sarah? She's just not very likable. And later in this book, Matt, from the second story, just an awful person. But in this book, somehow it does a good job of, not making you absolutely hate Bob for just being a total grump the whole time. At least for me. I never really, was like, "Oh, Bob, stop being Bob." It's not very annoying. So anyway, he signs up for the bunny call, they do some activities, and then later that night, basically immediately, he's regretting it, right? And so he can't sleep. For some reason, he's unable to sleep. He keeps waking back up. And so he goes outside, and this is where things start to get a little bit weird, right? So he goes outside, and he sees this man smoking in the distance. He goes over there, and they have a chat. By the way, time is very important in the story. Bob mentions it's 5:08, which is important. And so he and the smoker, the guy's name is Philip, by the way. He's not just the smoker. He has a name. And so they start talking, and Bob starts telling a story. His mom used to collect things, and he says she kept her most prized possessions on top of the hutch in the dining room, and the teacups were on top of the sideboard that was next to the hutch. One day, I thought it would be fun to try and see if I could throw my basketball up into one of her baskets. I have no idea why it seemed like a good idea at the time. I was 9. So I toss up the ball in a perfect arc. I've been practicing and it lands in the biggest basket. I'm jumping around like I've won a tournament, making all the crowd noises, whooping and cheering, but then the ball starts to tip the basket, and the basket starts to go over. It happens in super slow motion, like a millionth of an inch per few seconds, or at least that's how it seems. And then the basket is on its side, and the ball is on its way past the other baskets and on down the side of the hutch. I can see what's going to happen, and I'm in motion immediately. But there's no way. No way I can stop it. The ball comes down and lands on the sideboard, scattering Mom's teacups all over the place. All but one of them broke. Mom was devastated. Which, this story doesn't seem to come into play later on. It's just a really random detail, especially the all but one of them breaking. When I first read the story, I was like, oh, okay, all of his family except for one of them is going to die or something. That, spoiler alert, I guess, doesn't happen. Everyone's fine in the end. It's a very happy ending. It's just a really weird detail, and I can't think of what it could mean. If you guys have any ideas, let me know. Okay, and by the way, if you've made it this far, you could subscribe too if you're new here. That would be pretty cool, I think. That would be pretty cool. Do it. So anyway, he's decided, okay, this is enough. He's gonna stop the bunny call, and so he tries to run back to the cabin. He starts hearing symbols in the woods, which is really weird. He starts hearing someone chasing him, which never goes anywhere. Eventually, he makes it back to the cabin. He never sees anyone. And it says it's only 5:25 a.m., which Bob thinks it's weird because he feels like he's been running around the forest for an hour. Which, it could be a sign of something supernatural going on, or it could just be Bob going absolutely insane. I don't think he was out there for an hour, and the time has just stopped moving. It doesn't seem like that's how it's going in the story, especially once you read it. And so from there on, he realizes he has to stop the bunny call. And so Ralpho knocks at the door. Again, and still, at this point, we don't know if he's a man in a costume. We don't know if he's an animatronic. We find out later, somewhat. But we just don't know at the moment. So Ralpho knocks at the door, and Bob answers. He says, I want to cancel the bunny call, please. He's very polite about it as well. Very nice to this, psychotic rabbit. And so Ralpho, he leaves. And then he comes back. He starts knocking again. Bob tells him again, to leave. And Ralpho starts trying to force his way into the cabin, through the door, and then when that doesn't work, when Bob keeps him out, through the windows, through the trapdoor in the floor, which is a very weird detail. And that's kind of where the action scene begins, which goes for, a good chunk of the story. Up until then, it's pretty boring, but that's when things start to really get going, and in the end, Bob keeps Ralpho out of the cabin, he keeps pushing him back out. It's very tense, especially since his family is sleeping in the exact same room. They have earplugs in because they all snore, and so they can't hear him, unless he makes, a super loud noise, and so he's trying to keep quiet, just in case they hear him. It's very, very tense. I love it. But in the end, everyone's fine, and, Bob gets a new appreciation for his family. He's all happy. It's a very, very cheesy ending, by the way. Extremely so. But, in the end, everything's fine. There's some announcements at the breakfast the next day, and the first announcement is, the bunny calls couldn't be done this morning because the counselor who usually does bunny calls overslept. Ralpho wasn't able to make his rounds today. And that's just kind of where the story stops. So, we have some idea what Ralpho was. We know he wasn't just a dude in a costume, probably. Unless someone else got in the Ralpho costume. But we know this is something different. And the story ends just leaving you wondering, what was that thing? In the end, I don't think there's much lore to be had here. An interesting thing to note is that Bob's family, there's him, his wife, 2 sons and a daughter. which could be interpreted to be him being William, one of his sons being Michael, the other being the bite victim, and then the daughter being Elizabeth. But I don't know why that would be the case, because even if that is who they are supposed to represent, it doesn't really go anywhere. None of these people seem like there's no big lore reveals here that I can tell, unless you guys have some ideas. Let me know. Ultimately, it's just a really fun story. That took me 10 minutes to discuss. The second story, though, is interesting. It's one of the shortest in the series. It's called In the Flesh, and it's a very simple premise. I can probably get through this pretty quickly. So it's about a guy named Matt, who is absolutely the worst. Again, read the audiobook if you're curious. He's not a good guy. And he's designing the latest game in the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, we have broken the fourth wall. So we have this guy named Matt. He's designing the latest game. It's a VR game called Springtrap's Revenge. Now, when we first knew, because in the description, right, before the book even came out, we knew what the description was. And it says, Matt redirects the residual anger over his many failed relationships into a video game and ends up birthing the horrible consequences. Remember that word, birthing. Ugh. And so we thought Glitch Trap, right? We thought Glitch Trap. Oh, it's a video game. It's gonna be Glitch Trap. Springtrap is involved, but it's not Glitch Trap. I think that's, again, like in the first story, again, there seems like there could be some connections here, but they just don't seem to go anywhere. Whatever, I'll keep going. So he's making this video game, it's not working out. He rage quits, like, almost immediately after, like, a few tries. And so he just, the rest of the story is a lot of character stuff. He keeps going back to the game, trying to fix it up. Eventually what he decides he's going to do is he's going to make Springtrap's life miserable, which, is not how video games work. These characters in video games don't really feel anything, they're just blocks of code. But he's so angry at the game that he decides that he's going to make Springtrap, I guess, suffer like he's suffering when playtesting the game. I don't know, it's a bit shady there. And so what he does is he makes, what did he say? Let me find it. Yeah, it says, he programmed the game such that Springtrap was doomed to wander the maze alone all night, with no victims to stalk and no way out. He also sped up the game's time frame by 1,000, so that for each minute that passed in real time, 1,000 minutes passed for Springtrap. Matt found himself laughing louder and harder than he'd laughed in a long time. Sure, the rabbit might be able to kill his avatar, but that was nothing compared to the way that Matt could alter Springtrap's reality, could control time and space, and mete out a cosmic punishment like some kind of ancient vengeful god. Matt he's an interesting case. And so he leaves Springtrap like that for the whole evening. You'd think a game designer would know how games work better than this, but whatever. And so he comes back the next day. And Springtrap has been doing some weird things. He has been cloning himself. Somehow. He's been cloning himself. And then the clone kills the old self, and that's been repeatedly happening thousands of times over the night. And when Matt comes back, Springtrap is gone. He's not there. Which does not make any sense, even once you know what happens in the rest of the story. Even once you read the whole story, it doesn't make any sense. It's just completely... I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. The next, again, and then we have a bunch of more character stuff. The next interesting thing that happens is there's this hacker named Gene, right? He's hacked into the code. He's gotten this game early because, he's a big FNAF geek. And so he's really interested in this game. So he hacks it. He hacks, what would you say? He hacks into the servers and gets to the game, I guess. And when he opens the game, Springtrap isn't there. Well, he is. He's dead. Springtrap is just lying there dead. And when he tries to figure out what's up here, he goes into the code, right? And I've done a bit of programming myself, and so I kind of, and just like from basic computer knowledge, I kind of know what this is talking about, but it's a bit confusing. It says what he found made no sense. According to the code, Springtrap had been extracted from the very game that bore his name in the title. The program that initiated the extraction was inexplicably called itsaboy.exe. And I still don't really know what this means at all. So, Springtrap has been and again, extracted is just a fancy word for moved. He's been moved out of the game for some reason, and then the program that caused him to be moved, the program that started him being moved out of the game, is called It's a Boy. So I think this is kind of supposed to symbolize what happens in the end, which... what happens in the end, I'll get to that, but I think it's supposed to kind of symbolize birth, in a way, because Springtrap is being extracted from the game, he's being birthed out of the game. I don't know, none of this makes any sense. And so what happens after that, more character stuff, blah, blah, blah. Matt starts getting a bit sick, he starts getting a bit chubby, and he's getting pregnancy symptoms. I'll cut to the chase. In the end, he has this, bulge in his stomach, he feels pain, and so he's trying to cut himself open. He can't handle it anymore, he tries to cut himself open. A baby Springtrap comes out, and calls him Daddy. Fun story. I had a guy who, after I recorded the audiobook, he wanted to voice Springtrap's lines. He hadn't read the story yet, and so he didn't know, what the story was kind of about. And so he said, hey, can I voice Springtrap's lines in the audiobook? And I said, well, I already recorded it, but I guess I could add in a line, kind of replace it. But he only has one line, and it's, Daddy. And he thought I was joking. He thought I was just making it up. Yeah, he gives birth to Springtrap. And then there's a short scene with an investigation. Matt's roommate and a police officer, they're trying to figure out what happened. And all they find, the Springtrap is gone from Matt's body. All that remains is a tuft of fur. And then the story ends, basically, abruptly. They find the piece of fur, the officer kind of throws it away, and the story ends. So, I suppose the main question here is there lore in this? And again, as with the first story, I really doubt it. I think most of the lore in this book was put into the last story, The Man in Room 1280. But we'll get to that in a second. Any lore, any I can think of. Anything. It could be connected to Glitch Trap, but I can't think of it. Whatever, let's move on to the last story. The Man in Room 1280, as I said. And by far, the longest one in this book, and one of the longest ones we've gotten so far in the series. And it's pretty simple, but it has a lot of, really subtle, smaller clues that make it a lot more complicated than you might think. And as the story goes on, it becomes more complicated as well. So basically, it's about this man with gruesome burns all over his body in Heracles Hospital, which I assume is the same as Hercules, just a different name for him. Regardless, he should be dead. There's no way he should be able to survive the injuries he has, and it goes into great detail to tell you that. And there's a priest on his way to the hospital to kind of grant this man his last wishes, and prepare him for death, because of course he has to die, right? There's no way he could survive any longer than he already has, except he does. And so the nurses in the hospital, they think that this man is something evil, but the priest is more optimistic. His name is Father Blythe, and he believes the man is just a victim of bad circumstances, and that it wasn't his fault he got burned in this horrible accident. Whatever happened, we don't know what happened, what fire it was, but Father Blythe doesn't believe that's his fault. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that doesn't mean he's evil, even if he is being kept alive far past the point where he should be. And so what continues from there is Father Blythe tries to connect with this man. He tries to communicate with him. And although the man can barely move, obviously, he begins to move his fingers and shape out letters, and to communicate with Father Blythe. But before we get to that, and before we get to what he says, the weird thing is the man has two... Well, let me read it to you. First weird thing about this man, other than, the obvious, is he's apparently stuck in a state of having horrible nightmares, which, immediately kind of, I'm drawing a connection to Ultimate Custom Night, and that connection will only solidify as I continue with the story. Secondly, it says that the man has 2 brain signatures. Usually you would only have 1, because you're one person. But this man has 2 for 2 different people. This man and someone else. And it's revealed who that is later on, and it's very interesting. This story connects everything together. Everything. Almost everything. And we'll get to that. So, again, back to what's happening now. Father Blythe is communicating with the man. The man is using his finger to draw letters in the air. And what he says is, Faz ent... What was it again? Faz ent... Faz Benser Dissenter. Long story short, they figure out that it means Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center, and that the man wants to go there. It says he wants to go there because he's always wanted to go there, which is a bit of a weird phrasing for a grown man. You'd think, that's more the type of thing that a child would say, like, "Oh, I've always wanted to go there." In my mind, and so for the rest of the story. The nurses are trying to kill this man because they believe he's evil, and Father Blythe is trying to save this man and take him to the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center. And the women try all sorts of things to kill him. They try giving him an air embolism. They try performing a ritual. They try all sorts of things. And every time, a ghostly child stops them wearing an alligator mask. A child who never speaks, who always disappears, and eventually he starts being seen throughout the whole hospital. And obviously this kid isn't alive. That's immediately known. He's a ghost. But which ghost? Who is he? That will be explained very soon. So eventually, after a long, grueling time, Father Blythe convinces the people at the hospital to let him take the man to the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center, which I will now call the Fazbear Entertainment Center. That sounds so much like that one joke in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I swear, I was trying to be original. Whatever. Okay. And so they go to the Fazbear Entertainment Distribution Center, which, by the way, is just this huge group of buildings. Pretty old. It makes a note of mentioning that they're pretty old. But that they're still operating. They're still going. So obviously, these restaurants haven't closed down yet, and they store all of the animatronics that Fazbear Entertainment uses. And as soon as they get through the main entrance, no, they didn't use the main entrance. They used the back entrance. As soon as they get there, the man begins to convulse. He begins to shake, and then he, explodes. And if you read this story on its own, and you don't read any of the other stories, this makes no sense and will never make any sense. But, judging from just everything else that we've pieced together so far, and the Stitch Wraith story that comes after, we kind of know what's going on. Let me try to explain this to you, because it took a while for me to figure it out as well. So the man is supposedly our William Afton stand-in for this story. We know this because, it's a burned man, who apparently, it says in the story, was connected to the Fazbear Entertainment murders. So, and he's being haunted by this child, this ghost, whoever he is. Now, at the very end of the story, what's interesting is when the man explodes, Father Blythe hears giggles and footsteps, and he sees them going all around the building to the different toys. And as we can remember from, I believe it was the 4th Stitch Wraith story, Andrew, the little angry child who the vengeful spirit, we're calling him, he used to be, he says, I remember I was in a place with lots of cool stuff, and I was in this dog named Fetch, who broke down in a thunderstorm and then was put into the Stitch Wraith. He was in a place with lots of cool stuff, and he wanted to get back at a man who hurt him. All of this sounds very similar to what's going on here. And the physical description of the boy in this story matches Andrew perfectly. We also see Andrew in the new kid, where we get a physical description of him. He has black curly hair. This kid does too. It seems like this is meant to be connected. And so it seems like this, and Andrew says this, he attached himself to the man. he wouldn't let anyone kill him. He wouldn't let anyone save him. He controlled the man, and he didn't let him die until he was ready to go, until he was in the place with lots of cool stuff. And then, what he says is he infected all of the items in that place, the distribution center, with his agony, which spread to all the items in the center. So he infects all of these items, which are presumably everything we've seen in Fazbear Frights so far. Eleanor, maybe Funtime Freddy, the Lonely Freddy's, the Plush Trap Chaser, Fetch. Well, Fetch is different. Fetch, it seems like Andrew's actual soul went into Fetch, but his agony infected everything else. And that's why he is only in Fetch, as far as we know. And now the Citraith is trying to collect all the things he infected. So it seems like the Man in Room 1280 is the prequel to everything else in this series. Most things. There might be a few things that don't exactly fit, but it's a lot of things. Which is, and we still have a few questions, but this story revealed a lot. At first I was very confused. Now I think I know what's going on. And I can't wait to see where else this story goes. But in the meantime, thank you guys for watching. This has been a video, that's for sure, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.